Hamas. Meanwhile, families of released hostages have been speaking. Vicky Cohen, whose son Nimrod Cohen was released, says being reunited brings amazing excitement.
It is 2 whole years that I have not smiled, but it has come back a little bit. And now I have seen him. It is a wide smile and I can breathe. A sigh of relief. There's air in my lungs once again.
Nigel Farage says he's deeply concerned a man who threatened to kill him could be released in 18 months. 26-year-old Fayaz Khan, who arrived in the UK in a small boat, was jailed for 5 years earlier. Former Premier League referee David Coots pleaded guilty to making an indecent image of a child. It follows the discovery of a Category A video by police in February. And economists predict the UK will have the highest rate of inflation out of the world's top economies this year and next. The International Monetary Fund expects it to average 3.4% this year. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 9 points at 94.52. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.14. LBC weather. Clear spells for Scotland and the southwest tonight. Cloudy elsewhere with drizzle. Lows of 3 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening to you. It's 8:02 on LBC. We have a star panel tonight for you. Let me introduce them. Sitting to my left is Dr. Ellie Chowns, Green Party leader in the House of Commons. It's a very grand title, isn't it? And MP for North Herefordshire. Sitting next to her is Lord Matthew Elliott, Conservative peer, who is one of the co-authors of this magnificent book. It's a lovely, cleaned cover. I like a white cover. Prosperity Through Growth. It's more interesting than it sounds, I think. Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones is a businessman. He's known as the Black Farmer because he's a farmer and for obvious reasons. And Tonia Antoniazzi is Labour MP for Gower and chair of the Commons Northern Ireland Select Committee. We're going to have a great discussion over the last hour, but it does rather depend on you asking us some interesting questions. So if you'd like to do that, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on the same number and text 84850. And of course, watch us on Global Player or the LBC app.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Right, let's go to our first caller. It's Robbie in Chelmsford. Hello, Robbie.
Good evening, all. My question is, with a cost of living crisis and inflation looking to stay relatively high for the next 2 years based on recent forecasts, what can be done to fix rip-off Britain?
Rip-off Britain? You mean because we've got, well, sort of high inflation? You think that means we've got rip-off Britain?
I think it's rip-off Britain because if you look at things relatively, the things people need to live, food, energy, as has been pointed out at party conferences, but without potentially some good solutions, which I come to your esteemed panel, but wages and things aren't going up as quickly as all of those expenses we need to live. So people's quality of life is going down, et cetera, due to inequality. It's a rip-off.
Well, Matthew, I imagine this is something that you cover in your book.
It is. I think there's a lot of truth in what the caller said. If we think about it, since the financial crisis, we've had really low growth levels within the UK, and the population has gone up a lot. So per capita, we've become poorer in many ways, and that's why I think people feel poorer and feel they are being ripped off. So what we really need is a growth agenda to get back to growth and start having some growth again.
You see, this is very interesting because it was, I think we can say, Liz Truss started this whole thing. She wanted to go for growth, but she went for it, should we say, sort of rather too quickly maybe, tried to do too many things all at once. Rachel Reeves is obsessed by growth, but we haven't really got much. And a lot of her policies, some people would say, are actually anti-growth policies. So where do we go from here?
For the book, we talked to 5 prime ministers and 9 chancellors and many other people try and get the answers to these questions. And one of the key things that came out from both Conservative and Labour politicians was that you need that long-term plan. You can't just sort of go from budget to budget and work within quite small amounts of fiscal headroom. You need that real plan covering not just tax and spend, but also regulation and money supply and free trade and all these other things to have that plan to get back to growth.
Ellie.
Well, I completely agree with Robbie. We do have a cost of living crisis, and we've got, options on the table that the Chancellor could take to address that. And sadly, she seems to be resisting. I very much hope that in the upcoming budget, she'll see the light. Primary one, we're facing a crisis of inequality in this country, and we have options. We should be taxing wealth much more fairly. We should be taxing unearned income in the same way that we tax people's wages, and we should be reinvesting that funding into the things that will generate long-term prosperity. Now, if we just talk about growth in a very simplistic way, what we risk missing is the question of growth in what, and is that benefiting people? But where I do agree with Matthew, we probably won't agree on all that much, but I definitely do agree. We need a much more long-term approach to policy making. And we've got a politics that, unfortunately, sends everybody in the other direction. It makes everything about winning a few votes and a few marginal seats at the time of an election. Nobody ever thinks beyond 5 years. And we've got to change that. We've got to have long-term politics, tackle inequality, tax wealth fairly, and reinvest that in the infrastructure and investing in the people of this country.
Why is it that people on the left, their knee-jerk reaction to any question about growth is to say, let's put up taxes? When has putting up taxes ever generated growth?
Well, actually, 45% of the economy is what the government invests in, what the government spends. We've got to get away from this idea that it's only spending money in the private sector that generates growth. I'll give you a couple of examples. The Green Party wants the government to invest much more in social housing. We've got a huge housing crisis. We've got people paying out money.
And you're going to make it worse by abolishing private landlords?
If you look at the policy, there is loads of really, really sensible stuff. What we want to do, we want a massive boost to investment in social housing. That would generate, long-term contracts for construction companies. It would generate, of course, houses for people to live in at affordable rents. We should build them so that they're properly fit for the future, so we don't end up having to retrofit them 10 or 20 years down the line to make sure that they're properly energy efficient. That cuts people's bills. These are exactly the sort of levers that the government could be using. And this is what I mean about long-term policy. We need to be thinking about investment 10, 20, 30 years. What will make life better for the next generation? And that will generate the growth in well-being that we need now.
OK, Tonia.
Look, here I am going to agree with Ellie and
we can't have this. Come on.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it?
Wilfred, I'm relying on you, mate.
This is like the politics of yesteryear, basically. I just can't believe this, but carry on.
Look, it is true. We do need a long-term plan, and we cannot, we can't fix everything in a year. And we haven't been able to fix everything in a year. It's a tough job. Of course, I'm going to say this. We have inherited 14 years. I mean, I know you're going to say that.
9 minutes of the programme starting.
We should have a bingo card.
It is true, though. When we have a change in government, we have a change in circumstances, and we have to deal with those circumstances. So without saying, oh, boo-bar, you naughty Tories, this is what you've left us with.
Say that.
Well, I did, but I am also a realist, and I know that we're in a position. Look, my constituents are poorer. They're poorer because of leaving the EU. They're poorer because of the global crisis and energy crisis. All of those things. It's a cumulative impact, and that cumulative impact is, hitting my constituents, and I feel very, very strongly about it. But we have got to give Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor, the confidence to move forward with her plans, to have the conversations with the right people and to build a successful future, working with everybody. And, we need to have consensus of opinion and work together, because this divisive politics that we have at the moment is really not getting us anywhere. And we've seen that, Iain. I'm centrist mum. I just want to say, can we just be grown up? Can we all work together, and can we put the country back together? Because what I see is the impact that leaving the EU has had on the people in Northern Ireland, how they are the forgotten people very much, and how their economy is worse off than other devolved nations. And I'm saying that as a Welsh woman. I feel
the majority of Wales voted for Brexit.
And that's okay. But the other thing is, and I can accept that, right? I have had to accept it being a Ramona. But what I think, Iain, right, is the people that made those decisions and the people who have been able to walk away, like Boris Johnson, like Jacob Rees-Mogg...
Or like Matthew Elliott, you could say.
And like Matthew, because those decisions that were made, Matthew, were never... They were always going to impact on my constituents and my young people that want the freedom to travel and be able to work abroad and do all of those things. It wasn't about immigration, per se. It was about selling something to people that you did brilliantly. You did a very good job because you achieved what you wanted to achieve. But I still feel a little bit robbed for my constituents and now, are poorer as a result of it.
I reject the idea that we're poorer as a result of Brexit. And if you look at the growth figures since Brexit, the UK has been growing faster than Germany, France, other Western European countries. The amount of trade we're doing with the EU is higher now than it was in 2019 before we left the EU. So I reject that assertion. It's said again and again, but we're richer as a country in that meantime. I think growth is still pathetically low. It is also in other countries. France at the moment, for example, is facing a huge economic crisis and debt crisis as well. So this disease, if you like, of low growth is something that affects lots of different countries, not just the UK.
And it's not, and it's obviously cumulative with other factors as well. And I understand that, but I just think that those people were able to walk away, and it didn't impact on their lives, and made those decisions, and it just hurts.
Okay,
sorry to be human about it.
Let's go from centrist mum, self-described, to centrist dad, possibly.
I'm not a centrist at all. Growth is the most important thing. And I think what governments need to actually understand, they cannot create growth. All they could do is create the conditions to allow the private sector to go out and do it. What's interesting about today's politics is that you're the politics of yesterday. What's happening with AI, just as a businessman, the amount of change that has made in the year is astronomical. And so what I just think policymakers need to understand is this. Look, this is an area we don't understand. All we could do is create the right conditions to let people go. Now, I'm a product of Thatcher. My story is that I'm a guy from society's dustbin heap. Like, let's go without any qualifications at all, that I'm dyslexic. So how does somebody like that go from that to achieving the success I've done? Because Thatcher created the climate that allowed people to go and do it themselves. What the state does, it makes people think that the state has the answers. It doesn't. And this is one of the traps I think we've fallen into. And just listening to what you're all talking about now is what the problem is. You don't know the answers. I wish I knew what the answer is going to be in the future. All you could do is create the right conditions.
I mean, this really frustrates me, actually, with all due respect, Wilfred, because it's...
With all due respect, an insult's coming now.
No, I don't do that. He knows I genuinely don't do that sort of politics. Yeah. But it just makes no logical sense. She leaves that to Zach Polanski. It just makes no logical sense to say that, the government can have a really harmful effect on growth, that it can restrict growth, but it can't generate growth itself. That doesn't make any sense.
I'm not saying that. I said
we've seen lots of... Just to finish, we've seen evidence that government policy has hugely restricted growth. For example, the impact of austerity policies post-financial crisis had a hugely damaging effect, and we are still seeing the effect of that economically and also socially, because the kids that have grown up under Tory austerity for the last 15 years are paying the price.
Don't forget the Lib Dems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lib Dems 5 years there. But equally, there's loads of evidence of government investment being a driver of growth. If you look at the work of Mariana Mazzucato, for example, about how innovation in the economy has so often been driven by clear industrial policy on the part of government, deciding what things to invest in, not just getting away and leaving the space for the private sector, but actively driving innovation.
Look at America.
For example,
look in America, okay, and you look at that. The government's not involved in the innovation there. Government would never come up with AI. So this is why the idea.
No, but it does invest in infrastructure, and that creates jobs. That creates growth.
Sorry, but if you just look at things like the I can't remember all the details now, but if you read Mariana Mazzucato on the investment of the American government in things that were done under the auspices of defence that then led to the development of all sorts of high-tech things that were then taken on by the private sector.
So you're advocating that we invest in our defence industries here, Ellie?
It's not the only sector. I've given you the example of housing. Another example I would talk about is transport.
But your policies would devastate the housing sector.
No. Of course not.
Sorry, abolishing private landlords would lead to a housing crash, which would mean that nobody would be interested in building new houses.
Do you know what? I mean, that is a policy with an eye-catching title that is not the title that I would have chosen for it. But if we talk about the policies, we're talking about controlling rents so that they're not just going up and up and up through the roof. We're talking about
taxation, regulation. That is not going to get people like Wilfred to open their wallets and invest in new businesses because they won't want to take the risk because they think government will invest too much. Sorry, I've stolen your lines there, Matthew.
No, you're great.
I genuinely don't think that's the case. There are so many
history proves it is. That's the problem.
History actually proves that government can play an incredibly positive role in the economy.
I'm not saying government can't.
In the ways that I'm just describing here. And I think that government has stepped away from the field for far too long. Absolutely, since the financial crisis. We should have been stepping into the space of housing. What did government do under Thatcher? Sold off all of the council houses. Didn't make sure that the revenues, terrible policy, because of course it benefited a small amount of people, fabulous for them.
A small amount of people, 2 million people.
Relative to the people who now
2 million.
Relative to the people who
people
now
in Tonia's constituency,
no, seriously,
they wouldn't agree with you.
No, it benefited the people who were able to buy those properties, but all of the other people over the subsequent decades who would otherwise have been able to have housing at a reasonable price have been unable to access it.
No, that's because new houses haven't been built enough. That's nothing to do with the council houses.
It is.
But all of this is not going to do anything about growth.
Were not reinvested.
This is not going to do anything about growth. It's all about how do you allow people to be innovative, to be entrepreneurial. It's how do you create that?
Please.
And so, housing and all that is what's the point of having a really nice house if you don't have an economy that's going to be creating jobs? That's what we need to be focusing on. And I just think we spend too much time faffing about all those things that are ideal, but let's focus on the one thing that's then going to get us all these stuff that we talk about.
Right, we can all calm down now because we're going to a break. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Get extra support with Immunace multivitamins with vitamin D, zinc and selenium, which contribute to the normal function of the immune system. Immunace from Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. Verification at vitabiotics.com. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
Angela Rippon, what are you doing here?
I've come to tell you about using energy flexibly, Albert.
Flexibly?
Yes, smart meter owners could get rewarded for moving their energy use, like doing the laundry at off-peak times.
So I don't need to do the splits?
No, Albert. Nobody wants to see that.
Get rewarded for using energy flexibly, only with a smart meter. Search Get a Smart Meter today.
Eligibility and availability vary. Consumer action required. Reward schemes and tariffs available to selected customers from selected suppliers.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can wind down and catch up. A chance to let conversations flow and plans unfold. And swap doom scrolling for telling stories. Too good for the group chat. Make the journey part of the joy and save 1/3 with off-peak group tickets at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
Hello, I'm a National Lottery scratch card. Over 5 people a second win with me. Ooh. That's like 30 winners since I started talking. Oh, 12 more. 14. 21!
Is there a win in store for you? Play a National Lottery scratch card today. Winners is an average. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
90 minutes past 8. We have with us Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones, businessman known as the Black Farmer. Tonia Antoniazzi. Every time I say your name, I think I'm murdering it.
Lessons later, Iain.
She's Labour MP for Gower and is the chair of the Northern Ireland Select Committee in the House of Commons. That, I would imagine, is one of the more challenging select committees to chair.
It's absolutely brilliant. It's honestly...
People always go native when they have anything to do with Northern Ireland.
I became PPS to Owen Smith, and then and then I became a shadow minister. And I have to say that every time I go there, I love it, and I will spend as much time as I can over in Northern Ireland. The people are absolutely fantastic.
And I think every Northern Ireland secretary, whether they're Labour or Conservative, has exactly the same experience.
It's like, and it really is a passion of mine, because I feel like they have, as I said earlier, their voices are unheard. They need, they've had a lot of trauma, a lot of, legacy issues that they have to deal with, and these people are wonderful, and they deserve the best.
Should it not be chaired by a Northern Ireland MP, though?
Well, because they don't have the amount of representation, it just doesn't, due to the House rules, it doesn't work like that. But I would say it's good to have those voices. I'm very good friends with Gavin Robinson, with Saoirse Eastwood, with Claire Hanna, even with Robin Swan, and it's important that I have those. No, he's a great guy, actually. He's a great guy. But the whole point is, I think it's better to have somebody that is impartial to be doing what is quite tricky work. So I don't come at it with any particular agenda. I just want the best for the people of Northern Ireland. Yeah.
Dr. Ellie Chowns is Green Party leader in the House of Commons, MP for North Herefordshire, and Lord Elliot, Matthew Elliot, Conservative peer and author of this fine new tome. That's 3 plugs in 21 minutes. You don't get that on the BBC, do you? Right, let's go to another question. It's from Scott in West Hampstead. Is Nigel Farage right to demand that the asylum seeker who threatened to kill him be deported? And shouldn't all asylum seekers who commit criminal offences in the UK lose their right to claim asylum? Well, this is what we've been talking about over the last hour. Ellie, let's start with you.
Do you know what? I am completely opposed to any form of political violence, and I stand for everything the complete opposite to what Nigel Farage does. And I think it's completely outrageous that he has suffered this threat on his life, and utterly inexcusable. On the question of deportation of asylum seekers, and actually I think we discussed this on the programme with you before, possibly, I think it needs to be on a case-by-case basis. If somebody has committed a relatively minor crime and their life would be at risk if they were deported back to their origin country, then I think, that has to be thought about.
Does it? Because I don't care.
A violent threat.
Does it really have to be thought about? If somebody comes to this country, whether they're an asylum seeker or an immigrant who's not a British national but is here legally, surely if they commit a serious crime, and I agree it has to be a serious crime, surely they should face automatic deportation because they've abused the hospitality that this country has offered them.
If the example that I'm giving is if their life is in danger if they were sent back home, and the reason that's my position is because I believe in universal human rights. So in the same way as I don't believe that Nigel Farage should be subjected to a threat of violence, I also don't believe that anybody else should be subjected to a threat of violence, even if they've done things that I am completely opposed to. It's why I'm opposed to the death penalty, even for murderers and things like that. I believe in defending the rights of every person to life. So
what about the rights of British citizens to be protected from serious criminals who've come to this country?
Absolutely.
Maybe they haven't intended when they come here to do harm, but they have done harm and therefore have to suffer the consequences of that.
Indeed, and they should be put in jail if they've committed crimes. Absolutely.
Okay, Matthew?
I do think that if you committed a crime, you should be deported, yes. There's probably some sort of tariff, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, some sort of level, but yes, for sure. We're facing a problem at the moment with the prisons and capacity within the prisons and people being let out of prison because they're full. So, yes, we have an issue there. I think there's also a bigger issue as well about Nigel Farage's security. This is somebody who is at the top of the polls, looks like he could be the next Prime Minister if an election was held now. So I think he's probably get better security than he currently has.
Wilfred, I seem to remember last time you were on this programme, you kind of came out as a Reform supporter.
You're right, I am. Over this. The thing I can't get my head round, and this is what's really winding me up about this story, is that is it right that this guy had been refused asylum in Sweden?
Yes.
And then how in God's name, with that, he was then allowed to try and seek asylum in this country?
He committed 17 offences in
Sweden.
So
what it tells me is this, is that the whole asylum needs to be overhauled. I mean, Who is getting asylum? What is the rationale? And perhaps the old rules of getting asylum needs to change, and it's not fit for today's purpose. Actually, it's more beneficial that people stay in their countries and try and sort out the countries rather than coming here. So I think what this has told me is that we need to look at who is granting asylum and for what reasons, because I think a lot of people are getting it where they shouldn't be. That's what this has told me.
My understanding is he hasn't been granted asylum.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah.
Well, but you see, his application.
His
application is going through.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Matthew and Wilfred would both agree that it may be going through, but it should now be stopped.
Yeah. It's like, I just don't understand.
And he said he would happily go back to Afghanistan. So I'll happily sort of pay for his ticket.
Yeah.
Tonia?
Right. I mean, being in the United Kingdom is a privilege. It's not a gift. It's not to be abused. We are going to deport on conviction. We need to get people out quicker. This is what's happening.
But he won't be deported on conviction, will he? Because he's from Afghanistan.
Well, there are issues around that, and that's taken a little bit longer. And he does need to go. He wants to go. Like Iain,
but even if he didn't want to go, he should be sent back.
Well, and I agree with you. I mean, we are deporting. The Labour government is deporting more foreign nationals than the last government ever did. So, we do realise that we have a system that needs reform, but it needs honest and open conversations about it where we don't become divisive, because me and you, we may agree on some issues and we may disagree on others. Let's iron them out. That's what we're there in Parliament to do. And,
But no one still has answered that fundamental question that I'm asking. How do you determine whether somebody has asylum? And I think people could ask for asylum for a number of things that I don't think is relevant to today's society. That's what needs to be sort of fixed.
I don't fully agree, Wilfred. So where I do agree with you is that we need a complete overhaul of our asylum system. And we also need to be clear, and this often isn't done, but we need to be clear about the asylum system and then migration. The vast majority of people who come to this country are coming through legal migration routes. They're coming on work visas. They're coming as students, hundreds of thousands of them. And of course, about 250,000 Ukrainians have come under a legal route for people fleeing violence in that country. But that's pretty much the only country from which you can come in a legal way. But it's definitely not the only country in the world where civilians are facing huge risks of violence. And so part of my solution, part of the Green Party's solution to the issue of illegal migration would be to regularise it, to have more safe, legal, managed routes like the one that we have in place for Ukrainians. Because we know, for example, people coming from Sudan, I think 98% of them are granted asylum when their applications are eventually processed, but they have to wait around for months and months.
Let's take Sudan, isn't it? Why is somebody from Sudan granted asylum?
Because there's an incredibly violent civil war and a genocide going on in Sudan at the moment.
I don't want to be so there's wars going on all over the world. If we are going to start granting people asylum because they're in a war zone, I do not think that is fit for today.
The international legal framework is that somebody has the right to claim asylum.
Well, that's what I think is wrong.
If their life is at risk in their home country.
God, your life could be at risk anyway. I just think it is wrong.
Isn't there a fundamental humanity
say because your country's at war, you then have a right to have asylum.
Who would you grant asylum to?
Well, I just think it needs to be, you've got to really sort of analyse every case and make sure that, you know...
That's what the asylum system
What I'm trying to say is, be like, if someone... if I was in government, I think, for example, one of the things about Afghanistan is really interesting. So those people helped us during the war. So if there are spies or things like that, I'd grant those where people have seen to help this country. But the fact that you're in a war zone, I don't think entitles you to have asylum.
Under international law, it does. But
but that's why the law isn't asked, because it doesn't make sense to me.
To finish my point, under your argument, Wilfred, this country wouldn't have participated in the kinder transport and offered asylum to Jewish children fleeing Nazi violence.
Going back to history. Back then, I could understand that. But
so why is history different today?
It's different now. I just think it is very, very different. We can't always go back to history as a reference point.
All right, we'll take a current example. If you're a gay man in Uganda, you stand to be killed.
I don't think that should give you a right to get asylum. I don't.
So basically,
you think it's fine for them
you
to
would
be
abolish
killed?
the asylum system.
I would abolish it as much as I can. I just think that, the only people that would get asylum are people who've actually worked for us.
When we first met, I sort of thought you were kind of a Cameron conservative, and now you've become uber Faragist.
No, I'm not a Faragist, but I just think that, it's because of the abuse of the system. Yeah. And actually, that's what I'm trying to do, is that I want people not to think that England or Britain or the UK is a really good place to come to. What we want people to think is actually, you're going to have to really demonstrate that you got this right.
So
Matthew,
I mean, what William is suggesting is kind of the equivalent of taking back control. Sorry, what did I say?
William.
I'm sorry.
It is. There's an issue here as well about the judiciary and also the European Convention of Human Rights and how the judiciary are interpreting those rights. And you have well-meaning people in the Home Office, both Conservative and Labour as well, who are trying to sort of redefine how the asylum system and who should be able to claim asylum here. And they're fighting with one arm tied behind their back because of the judiciary. So the next big argument is really, how do you reform that, or should you leave?
Right, on that bombshell, go on quickly.
Really important thing. So the costs of the immigration system in the UK is less than 0.5% of government expenditure. Less than 1/200th of government expenditure is on the asylum system. But we spend far, far more than that, completely disproportionate amounts of political time talking about it. The problem in this country is not immigration, it's inequality. That's what we should be focusing on.
You tried telling the majority of my listeners that. Because they are concerned about it.
And I think they're concerned about it because people like Farage, people like the Reform UK Party, have deliberately focused the public debate on this issue.
I don't think it is
which
that.
is a tiny proportion of government spending.
I think it is partly because politicians over many years refuse to even talk about it.
I would agree with you.
As I've explained here, I'm super happy to talk about this. We do have a fundamental responsibility of humanity to offer compassion to people fleeing violence.
No, we don't.
I have hosted in my home families through the Freedom from Torture charity who've experienced torture in countries like Uganda, in countries like Iran. They've come to this country, they've fully integrated. They're now working as teachers and child psychologists in this country, making an incredible contribution. Don't tell me, Wilfred, that those people aren't a benefit, an asset to our country, and that we don't have a fundamental obligation of humanity to support people.
We do have to go to the news. We could carry on with this for the rest of the programme, but we'd better not. 8:32 is the time on LBC. Daryl Jackson has the headlines.
Donald Trump's issued a warning to Hamas, saying if they don't disarm, we will disarm them quickly and perhaps violently. The US president's been speaking at the White House a day after signing his peace plan for Gaza that saw the release of Israeli hostages in return for Palestinian prisoners. Nigel Farage says he's deeply concerned an asylum seeker who threatened to kill him in a TikTok video could be free in 18 months. Afghan national Fayaz Khan was earlier sentenced to 5 years. And global economists warn the UK's inflation rate will be the highest in any G7 nation this year and next. The IMF says soaring food costs are a major factor. LBC weather. Clear spells for Scotland and the southwest tonight. Cloudy elsewhere with drizzle, lows of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees, like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working. Offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year. Mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
Train to Pevensey Bay. Beach, mates, cooler. Oh,
Danny, you got the hummus, yeah?
Of course. Now this is what it's all about. Time to relax.
Huh? Frisbee? No, you two crack on.
Just made the train. Now home to over half the beach from my bag. 10 out of 10 day, though.
Download the Southern Railway app to book tickets and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply. See our website for full details.
Fraud can happen faster than you think. But at Barclays, we use innovative technology that spots fraud in under a second. And our dedicated team of experts work 24/7. So you can go about your day knowing we never stop working to keep you and your money safe. Search Barclays Fraud Protection to see how you can stay one step ahead. Barclays. Make money work for you.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
25 to 9. We have with us Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones, businessman known as the Black Farmer. Tonia Antoniazzi, Labour MP for Gower, chair of the Commons Select Committee. Lord Matthew Elliott, Conservative peer and the author of this. I'll brandish it again.
Oh, thank you.
Prosperity Through Growth. He's got some very good co-authors. Dr. Arthur Laffer of the Laffer Curve, Michael Hinsey, and Douglas McWilliams, who does a brilliant podcast in Ireland, which is really a coincidence. I just emailed him this afternoon to say, can I come on to promote my book? Good. Now, Ellie Chowns, you ran for the Green Party leadership. It did not end well. Why do you think that was?
Well, Zach ran a brilliant campaign and won a huge proportion of the vote. And he's been doing an absolutely brilliant job as our party leader ever since.
But you'd have done a more brilliant one.
Zach has done a brilliant job. Obviously, in politics, I mean, number one, you don't enter an election if you don't want to win it, right? But also, you win some, you lose some. It's just how it is. There's
You're
ups and
better than
downs.
him, though. They made a mistake.
Oh, well, that's very sweet of you to say so, Wilfred, especially since I disagree with you on everything.
No, you're pretty good.
But genuinely, Zach's been doing an absolutely brilliant job. Our membership numbers are going through the roof. Honestly, it was going up by like 1,000 a day last week, and then we hit 100,000 at the weekend. And I heard today we've hit 110,000. We're going to be overtaking the Tories any minute now, honestly.
And you're 13% in the polls.
Yes, exactly.
But were you watching the debate that I hosted between your leadership colleague Adrian Ramsey and Zach Polanski?
I didn't watch it, no. I did.
But you heard about
clip.
it, didn't you?
I saw a clip that was the thing about do we like each other or something. Me and Zach really like each other, actually.
Yeah, but why
I've had
couldn't
to say this
Adrian
lots
have
of times.
said that?
Look, I'm not my brother's keeper. I really like Zach. He really likes me. We in lots of ways, but we do like to get on the dance floor together, and we did that at conference again this time too.
And what were you dancing to?
Oh heavens, I can't remember. It was very late at night.
You were so drunk.
No, I wasn't that drunk, but I was merry enough to decide it was a good idea to go for a little swim in the sea at midnight.
Oh my goodness me!
I do like a bit of outdoor
where was
swimming.
your conference?
Bournemouth.
Oh no, Bournemouth is a great conference venue.
It is.
Right, let's go back to the question, shall we? Nikki in Kent. Migrants will be required to pass tough new English language requirements under a law introduced in Parliament today. Should every country have this requirement? I live and work in Italy for part of the year, and the English immigrants here make no attempt to learn their host country's language. Now, just a bit of background to this. Under new rules, which are set to come into force in early January, migrants applying for skilled worker or scale-up visas, those for companies which are growing quickly, will need to be able to communicate in English to the equivalent standard of an A-level. Tonia?
Do you know what I used to do before I was a parliamentarian?
Go on.
I was a languages teacher.
Me too.
Get away!
Yeah.
Oh, I knew I liked you. So I am a graduate in Italian and French. I've lived in both countries and think that it is very, very important that you speak the language of the country where you are living and working, because cohesion and social cohesion as a result of me being able to speak those foreign languages and being in that country. I ended up playing rugby. Nobody spoke English. I ended
9 caps for Wales.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
I've been doing the research. Prop forward. I thought fly half personally, but
that's because you're looking at me now. That's right. not as a chunky bird I used to be. But genuinely, I do think it's important. It does promote social cohesion and all of those things, and I think that the government is right to do this. I'm very pleased to see us promoting English because, learning the language to a good standard and to make sure that people that are coming in are effective in their jobs, enjoying their jobs, having a language. It gives you far more social skills. You enjoy it. It makes work easier. It's all of those things about learning a language is joyful. It shouldn't be seen as, you come here, you've got to have A-level English, you've got to have at that particular standard. This is a good thing. And I think it just promotes everything that Shabana Mahmood wants, in social cohesion and people enjoying living and working in our country.
Wilfred, do you think other countries should adopt this? Because I've got a couple of friends who moved to Spain, and they are learning the language. They're not finding it easy, but they're making a real effort. But all of the other English people that they mix with can't speak almost a single word.
I actually employ people from India that I've sponsored, so I've been through the process. And one of the things about these people is that they're really hardworking, they're dedicated, they're committed. There's a lot that the English could learn from these people, especially from the Indian and Pakistani country. The thing that irritates the hell out of me, and I say to them, right, I ban it, is that when you're, for example, in our shops and you're dealing with customers, do not speak your native tongue in the shops. It is bad manners. And if you're in England, the whole thing to do is to understand, to speak the language. And I think it's very, very, very important, because it's a laziness to go back. And every time I catch them, it does my head in. And therefore, making it compulsory that you could speak the language is very, very, very important. But there's a number of things that happen, you see. So part of the things I'm always saying to people, they speak very, very, very fast, and slow down, so you could start to understand what they're saying, and it's easier to sort of communicate. So employing these people, and they're fantastic, those are the issues that I have to deal with. So I think it's a really good standard to say you've got to be able to speak English.
Why do you have to bring people over from India to work in a farm shop?
Well, no, it's not just in a farm shop, but there's lots of things that I do. So trying to find one of the biggest challenges that I have, and I interview hundreds of people, is how do you get people from this country to do the sort of jobs that we have? And I think part of it is that they leave university and they come and they expect that they could go into a job that pays them a lot of money, and they're not prepared to actually do the hard graft. That is a problem that I find with most of the people that I employ, is that they're not prepared for the hard graft. They think life is a sprint. They want it tomorrow. And if they could understand that they put the graft in, they earn the sort of dividends, and then those people then get really looked after.
Matthew?
I think you put your finger on one of the biggest issues at the moment, and that's getting people into work. And credit to the government with the Get Britain Working programme. They want to get 2 million people into work over the next few years. And at the moment, there are only 700 job vacancies.
700,000. 728,000.
Well, that really would be a problem, wouldn't it, if it was just 700?
It's falling every day. Apologies.
It's not quite that fast.
Correct. There aren't that many job vacancies compared to the number of people who need to get into work. So it's important that these rules around there to make sure that, frankly, British people are able to get these jobs. But there's another big issue as well about creating more jobs. And that's the bigger thing about the economy with the right sort of rules and regulations in there in place so businesses can thrive to create more jobs to employ these people as well.
Ellie?
Well, back to the question about language, a couple of things to say. I mean, like you and Tonia, language, I love languages. Learning a language is a window into another culture.
What can you speak?
French quite badly. German, appalling, GCSE German, kind of fallen off the cliff since
Das kann nicht wahr sein.
But ein bisschen, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. But no, je parle français un petit peu. Anyway, so learning a language is great, and it's an important way for people to connect with being in the UK, absolutely. But the second point is that I think this policy feels a little bit like one of those kind of distraction policies. I mean, there were already rules that people had to have GCSE level English, and now it's been put up to A level English. If we think back to the point about the vast majority of migration is legal, right? So it might be coming to work in agriculture, might be coming to work in the care sector, might be coming to work. People might be coming to study. I used to be a university lecturer, and students came home and flipping out, they had to be able to speak and read English in order to be able to study in our universities. But like Wilfred said, many of the people coming to work in our country are coming from countries like India, where they're already speaking English as a second language very, very well, or care workers. I know care workers in my constituency from Zambia, from Kenya, again, fantastic levels of English. So this is not a real problem. This isn't a kind of really presenting problem. I think the Oxford Migration Observatory said, well over 90% of migrants already speak excellent English. So I'm a little bit puzzled that lots of attention is being put onto this.
I don't think it's about speaking English. It's about cultural. It's the cultural changes that need to take place. That's one of the things I find with the people that I employ, is just that they just don't absorb British culture, and part of fitting in is to accept and be part of British culture.
Yeah, but I think we do need to be a bit careful about kind of saying what is British culture and what isn't. You know, if you ask Brits what are the benefits of migration, they talk about food, right? Yeah. Brits really value the cultural contributions that people who've historically come from other countries have made to our country, and now they've become part of our culture
Tonia,
as well.
Is this aimed at all migrants? Because, I mean, there are, I mean, let's be honest about it, there are parts of the country where there are communities where the men in those communities don't want their women folk to learn the language because it means that it releases a bit of control. And so, I mean...
Well, that becomes another issue then, doesn't it?
But it is an issue. And I think it's one that people don't talk about very often because it's quite a difficult subject to approach.
Yeah. But also putting these targets in place, saying that this has to happen, will hopefully break down those barriers and give those women and empower those women to be able to be part of a wider community. And I think that's really important. But I just wanted to go back to something you said, Wilfred. When I worked in Italy, we weren't allowed to speak English in the Italian bar. And that for exactly the same reasons that you pointed out. Some of the staff that are employed in the House of Commons, they are Italian, French, different languages. I enjoy taking the opportunity to speak to them in a foreign language, but they have to be careful not to be seen to be doing that too much. But it's a joy to see that integration at all levels. And I think it looks like we're being harsh as a government, but we're not being harsh.
Perish the thought.
We're being realistic.
You've been really harsh in lots of other ways, two-child benefit cap, winter fuel allowance.
But you don't know what's coming up with the budget, do you? Neither do I. I don't have a crystal ball, but remember, you can't please all the people all the time, and this is a journey that we're on, a long journey that we need to improve.
That is something that politicians and radio presenters have in common, Tonia. Now we have some breaking news. The Israeli Defence Forces say that the Red Cross has received the bodies of 4 more of the deceased hostages. However, there were believed to be around 20 hostages remaining still to be returned to Israel prior to this evening. Right, we'll come to another subject in a moment, and of course our fun question at the end. It's 8:47.
LBC.
For anyone needing assistance when travelling with TfL, such as people with visual or mobility impairments, our Turn Up and Go service has staff on hand to help. It's available at all London Underground, London Overground and Elizabeth Line stations, and there's no need to book. Just turn up and go. That is how we're making the greener way to travel more accessible to all. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
With an Amex business card, Selena's earning points renovating her skin clinic and refreshing the builders.
14 coffees and 28 sugars, please.
And on new adjustable chairs for every room. And she can use the points to lie back and relax.
Don't put ice cream on your brother's head.
Well, sometimes. And that's because with an Amex business card, your points can go towards holidays and more.
Search Amex Business Card. Terms and annual fees apply. 18 plus. Subject to status. Basic card also available with no annual fee, rewards or other features.
Hello. I'm a National Lottery scratch card. Over 5 people a second win with me. Ooh. That's like 30 winners since I started talking. Oh, 12 more. 14. 21!
Is there a win in store for you? Play a National Lottery scratch card today. Winners is an average. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Hey, it's me, your dishwasher. I'm sorry about the chaos last night. I think a fork got jammed in my racks. Whoops. Don't even check the bills. I've overdone it. Don't get mad, okay? But I used up lots of power yesterday. Sometimes you just have to blow off some steam.
It can feel like all your energy does is take. But the longer you're with OVO, the more rewards you get. OVO, do energy differently. Beyond customers only, eligibility required, redemption limits apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones, Tonia Antoniazzi, Lord Matthew Elliott and Dr. Ellie Chowns with us answering your questions. Our next one comes from Chris in Stubbington. Chris, what would you like to ask?
Hello, yes. Was it wrong for a mosque to ban women and girls from taking part in an annual fun run?
Right. Well, now women and girls aged 12 or older were barred from taking part in the fundraising 5K run organised by the East London Mosque, which was described as inclusive. The Community Secretary, Steve Reed, has told LBC this is absolutely unacceptable and that he's appalled by what happened. We're actually going to be doing a phone-in on this after 9. Wilfred, let's come to you first.
Of course it's unacceptable. Of course it's unacceptable. And it's the point I was making earlier on, is that if you decide to come and live in this country, you have to understand that we have particular sensitivities, you have to understand that we have particular rules, and you have to understand there are certain things that as a society we are going to be uncomfortable with, and we're not going to accept it. And I think what has happened, and this is one of the reasons why you've got this backlash and the rise of Farage, is that actually what we've done up until this point is allow people to come with their own customs, their own cultures, even though for the people in the host society feels that this doesn't feel right. There's now a reaction to that to say, no, you've decided to come here, actually have some respect and do the things that we would do. So I think it's totally wrong.
But this has been going on, I think, for 9 years, and you think, well, why is it suddenly an issue now?
Because it's suddenly an issue now, because we're as a society, we are looking at how are we as the host community being treated? Why is it that we've been accepting of other people's cultures to the detriment of our own?
How is this to the detriment of our own?
Well, so what we're looking at now is that we as a society feel uncomfortable that women and girls are excluded because of their sex in any activity. And I honestly think that people will be upset about that. And if you're going to come into this country, you need to accept that you can't do things which is going to be excluding people.
I mean, effectively, religious institutions are effectively private sector organisations. There are gentlemen-only clubs, there are women-only clubs. I mean, if a private organisation wants to have a fun run and they don't want to have women involved for whatever reason they have, I mean, I can't understand it personally, but they do. Why should we interfere in that?
Because the reason why we should take clubs is a really good example. We've had clubs going on for hundreds of years. It's part of the British culture. So what we're talking about,
so gender discrimination is okay if it's been going on for 100 years in Britain, but not if it's...
No, what I'm trying to say is this, is that when you're when you're in your own country, you know, if I went to, let's say, an Islamic country, they will have certain rules of operating, and I'd have to be respectful of that. I wouldn't be wanting to go to those countries and saying, actually, I want to therefore be abiding by it.
Yeah, it is completely wrong to exclude women from the fun run, absolutely, and they should be able to take part. I didn't know about this thing until today, and found out that it had been going on for years. So it is wrong. But just as you said, you know, we've got hundreds of years of tradition of so-called gentlemen's clubs in places like London that still exclude women, and so that is equally wrong. And it's also a bit bizarre to say, you know, this is something, gender discrimination is something that is only associated with another religious group or an external culture, when unfortunately gender discrimination is live and well in British culture as well.
It is all. I mean, you look at certain aspects of Orthodox Judaism as well, where I think women are excluded from certain activities. So it's not just restricted to one, which again makes me wonder why it's suddenly being brought up. Matthew.
I think one of the biggest issues at the moment is the idea of a two-tier society, whether it's a two-tier legal system, that's one of the big things, and the idea of a two-tier system in place here. Had it been a church excluding women over the age of 12 from taking part in a fun run, it'd be all over the papers and would be stopped straight away. I think this is perhaps allowed
they used to even exclude women from being Archbishop of Canterbury. Well,
that's changed.
Precisely.
Tonia.
Right. The segregation is expected in religious spaces in the Muslim community. We know, we see it, we accept it.
Do we accept it?
Yeah, I was going to say we don't accept it.
But if I go to a mosque, I will respect, you know, that, and I will go to the women and I will speak to the men, and
do you not sort of feel awkward doing that?
I'm not comfortable with it because that's not my background, that's not my culture. However, they have a right, I believe, in their church to be able to, in their mosque, to be able to do what they want in their religious space. This is a community space, and therefore, in a community space, I think they should be reflecting and asking the women that wanted or may have liked to have participated in the fun run what will happen next year. As you've said, it's happened for years. They've never participated in it, and therefore, it has been brought up before, but this cannot be another reason for racial hatred. It cannot be another reason to just light that fire again, because this community, yes, it needs to change. Yes, that fun run needs to be inclusive of women and girls over the age of 12. And also, I truly believe in single-sex sports and single-sex spaces. And, we must absolutely say, if it's appropriate and right, then it should happen. And, for me, it needs to change, and they should
can I just say something for you guys there?
Can you not? Because we've got 4 minutes left and I want to get another question in, unless it's of vital importance.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think this is about race.
I knew I shouldn't have said that. Okay, fine.
I don't want there to be another opportunity.
Let's go to this. Short question from Josie in Kings Lynn. Is it the government's business if I were to smack my kids? Now, 300 public figures, including former footballer Alan Shearer and retired acting legend Sir Michael Caine, have signed a letter calling on the Prime Minister to ban smacking kids in England. It's already banned in both Scotland and Wales, but not in England or Northern Ireland. Tonia?
Yeah, I find, look, the world hasn't fallen apart in Wales because people aren't smacking their children. Do you mean yet? It's been in place for ages. It's been in place for ages. To be honest with you, I thought it was a bit woke when they would do the Welsh Labour government were doing it, and I thought, oh, come on, it didn't do me any harm.
Did you say so publicly?
I don't really think I had an opinion publicly, to be honest with you. But I did think that at the time. And to be honest with you, it's actually worked out well. Having a little bit of that public shaming of your child when you're hitting them, well, maybe they're having a tantrum in the supermarket or whatever. It's unnecessary and it makes people feel uncomfortable. But I haven't seen anybody be taken to court over it. I haven't seen anything dramatic happen. I think people think about their behaviours, and that's really important with your children. It gives the wrong impression.
William?
It is parents' responsibility to bring up their children. We had, about 50, 100 years ago, you had children were frightened of their parents. We now have a society where parents are frightened of their children.
My son's frightened of me.
And so this is one of the major problems, is that people think it's society's responsibility about their children's welfare. It's about parents being empowered and take on the responsibility.
Wilfred, I completely agree with you. I haven't seen that in teaching, particularly post-COVID with my friends that are still teachers. We do have that issue, but I think that this is something different.
Okay, Matthew.
I think I'm pretty changed my mind on this. I think pre-kids, I was perhaps more Wilfred's position, sort of the parents. Post-kids, got 2 young girls, probably more inclined towards the ban.
Ellie.
I've been really involved with this campaign. I was at 10 Downing Street today helping to hand in this petition. I was active on this Samantha Morton was there.
You have kids?
Sorry, I do have kids. Yeah, absolutely. And the point of this is that, in this country, it's illegal to use violence, for an adult to use violence against another adult. But it is still technically legal for them to use violence against a child.
Is a smack technically violence? A hit is, but not a smack.
It is physical violence, and it's unnecessary. Yes, parents have a responsibility to save their children from harm or to discipline them, to help shape their behaviour, but physical violence must not be part of that, and I really support this.
Right, time for our fun question. It's from Lee in Armagh. This year's World Conquer Championships happened over the weekend, featuring more than 250 adults from 9 nations. Which unusual skill do you have which you'd like to tell us about? Who would like to go first? Tonia.
Okay, so I can fit over, I think it's about 20 marshmallows into my mouth.
I wonder what you were going to say then.
I'm a champion chubby bunny.
20 marshmallows.
I haven't done it for a while, but I'm very skilled at it.
Next time you're on, we're going to bring Corey put in a marshmallow order.
Not the big giant ones, though.
Okay, Wilfred.
I'm desperately trying to find something funny that I do, but I can't think of anything.
Well, you've had 10 minutes to prepare. I told you the question.
Seriously, I can't think of a word. Sorry. I'll have to. That's going to keep me up all night. night thinking about
Think about your sausages. There's going to be a
stuffing
sausage.
sausages in my mouth. You don't know. It's not me. It's not coming.
Sorry.
Stop it. But you would like to know, somebody on the text has said, I've just tuned in. Who is Wilfred with the beautiful voice?
Oh,
you've pulled Wilfred.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I can juggle fire.
What?
Oh, clever.
Yeah. Oh,
Clever.
What a reaction.
What's that?
Juggling clubs. I can juggle with juggling clubs, and I can juggle with the ones that have got fire on the end of it. Yeah.
Right.
Not very well.
Okay, we'll have you do that next. Actually, maybe
Not in the studio,
maybe not in this
I don't
new
think.
studio.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd be very popular if we did that. Matthew.
I'm a little bit of a pool shark.
Ooh.
I am a sort of misspent youth, perhaps, but pool, snooker, that's my thing.
Oh, yeah. Darts? What do you like at darts?
No.
Oh, I like darts.
Well, on that bombshell, thank you all very much indeed for coming on the programme tonight. On tomorrow's panel, we have the Migration and Citizenship Minister, Mike Tabb, the Conservative Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, Lara Brown from The Spectator, and LBC alumni Ollie Dugmore, who's recently joined the New Statesman. So they'll all be here tomorrow night at 8 to take more of your questions. Well, we're going to return to one of the questions over the next hour that we've just covered, because the Community Secretary, Steve Reid, has said he was horrified and appalled of fundraising run in East London Park barred women from participating. Is this a confected row about nothing? Or do you think, no, this is actually quite serious, because we live in a country where women have equal rights, and yet a religious group seeks to deny them that on a fun run. But there are other religious groups that do this too. So why is this particular one? Give you a clue. It's a mosque. It's Muslim. Why is this particular one being singled out? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock.